uh, don't get the financial attention that they deserve and need.
Think it over. Think it through. Think Saginaw. What would you do if you had $52 million to improve your community? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Community Connections, community talk for community people. It is the fastest and most friendly weekly 1-hour talk show in the Great Lakes Bay Saginaw region. I am glad that you tuned in this May 23rd, 2021 for another sharing of community talk and information. I am Joyce Harvin. Today's Community Connection show is brought to you by the Saginaw branch of the NAACP and its Youth Council. We urge you to get connected, be informed, and stay involved. You just heard an announcement that you can also find on Facebook. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that in a minute. On March 11th of this year, the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, was signed by the president. My guest this afternoon is Carly Rose Hammond. Carly Rose. I first heard about Carly when she ran for the state representative seat for the 95th district. She did not win, but she remains an activist and advocate for the people, especially here in Saginaw. I'm going to be talking with her about the ARPA funds that arrived here in Saginaw and how she's working with citizens in following the Department of Treasury interim final rule, a document that explains what type of programs and expenditures that $52 million can be used for, and how you, the listeners of Saginaw, can participate in the process. So I want to say good afternoon to Carly Rose Hammond. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm doing very well.
Thank you for being here. Now, Carly, you are a 25-year lifelong Saginaw County resident. You currently work as a coordinator for the Michigan Progressive Revenue Table. What is that?
So the Michigan Progressive Revenue Table, you won't see a lot of publications by it or anything. It's a very informal group, but I'm working with a lot of big organizations in Michigan, from the Education Justice Coalition to Economic Justice Coalition to AFT, AFL-CIO. So a lot of labor groups, a lot of environmental groups, a lot of school groups, a lot of basically all of the advocates, big groups you can think of, are coming together to recognize that we need long-term revenue solutions in Michigan. We have had a decrease in our state revenue. Revenue sharing has gone down with cities. I'm sure we'll get into that later with these funds.
Yes.
But basically, we know that there are holes in the funding that our community needs, that we don't have progressive taxation rates. In fact, we have a regressive taxation system currently, and we're looking at ways to solve those issues. And we're looking at ARPA because it's such a big amount of funding coming into our cities and our localities.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that this money is at least thought about and talked about and hopefully used in these communities to build towards long-term solutions to systemic problems.
Now, you also have a background in environmental justice.
Yeah, so my first foray into community organizing was in our neighbors in Flint during the Flint water crisis. I was trained in Michigan United by my mentor, Lashea Darisaw, who taught me everything about community organizing. And it was honestly a very harsh way to get introduced into politics during that water crisis. But what it taught me is the reality for many people in our communities and the day-to-day suffering that a lot of people have to go through because they're not being heard. They're speaking. They are saying that there's problems, but they're not being listened to, and things aren't being done to benefit them.
Are they going about it the wrong way in order to get someone to listen to them?
I would say yes and no. I think that I don't believe it's incumbent on the citizens to force politicians to do their job. When they go and they show up at the ballot box, that's all you should have to do. But unfortunately, we have a system in this country and in the state that is founded on systemic racism and injustice and exploitation. So right now, citizens do have to go the extra mile in order to, whether it's demonstrate or contacting your elected officials, getting your voice out there, running for office yourself, encouraging friends to run for office, organizing in your communities, making sure that whether it's the city council or the state government or the federal government, that they know you're there and that you're not going to back down.
In Saginaw, I want you to know that in Saginaw, she worked to empower youth in politics and led a team that registered over 1,200 students to vote in 2018 in that election. And then she ran for a representative in Saginaw and managed another state house race in Monroe in 2020. How did that turn out?
Oh, goodness. Monroe went very Republican,
Oh.
the entire county, unfortunately. So we did not win that race. And that was tragic. If anybody pays attention to local politics, they'll know people are talking about the red wave that happened. That's why we have a very Republican legislature still.
Yes.
We have, Joe Biden as our president, but unfortunately, a lot of those local key local elections were lost. And so there's a lot of work to be done on the Democratic side to get voters out and to make sure that the things that we fight for are worth people coming to the ballot box for.
Very good. How did you start being an advocate and an activist?
So for
Why
me,
did you're passionate about what you do. How did you get that started?
so I always felt a passion for current events all through school, but I didn't really feel it as my calling. I thought there wasn't a place in politics for me. Honestly, I thought politics was for people who were a lot older. I thought that they were special. I thought that they were smart. I thought that they were the smartest people in the room, and I'm not good enough to have a place at that table. And then 2016 happened, and there was more debate. I was really keyed into that election. We had, obviously, there was a big thing with Bernie Sanders and Hillary in the primary. It brought a lot of young people out debating on both sides. And that tension, that back and forth really showed me that there was a place in politics for me. And my place was in the public sphere doing something. So I was at school with a full tuition scholarships, and some people were very upset that I did this. But I left school because I felt a huge, enormous pull to go work in these communities, to listen to what people were saying on the ground, because Flint is just 20 minutes away from where I grew up. So that was where I started. The Flint water crisis was, like I said, where I got my political start. When I left school 2 weeks later, I started showing up to a community meeting, met people there, listened a lot, kept on showing up, and the other people who kept showing up and the people who I liked what they had to say and how they organized and energized the community, how they recognized the community power, not trying to supersede it, but make sure that it had its own platform to have real power that translated into change. That was what I wanted to do, to take the voice of the people that is always strong and it's always crying out, whether it's a mother asking for help with housing assistance, that's a voice of the people. To, it is a crowd of people chanting in the streets, to take that and translate it into actual real policy change that would benefit all of those people who had those problems.
So with the ARPA funds, and what you're doing here to make sure or help people in the community to make sure that those funds are spent for the community. Okay. How will you go about organizing people to make sure that they are doing the right thing for their community with their ideas, with their plans?
I think that people are waiting for the opportunity to make a difference, always. And the reason why people don't show up to that community meeting or to that city council meeting is because they don't feel like they're being heard. Like their effort is only going to get them to the door that's locked from the inside. And no matter how much they pound, no one's going to answer it. That's the feeling. So with ARPA, this is literally $52 million that Saginaw can decide what it wants to do with for itself. And we will get into the specifics, but in my place here is that I have seen at the state level Saginaw get passed over so many times and ignored. I cannot tell you how many times in a conversation I get here, Oakland County, I hear about Washtenaw County, I'll hear about Wayne County, Macomb County. I don't ever hear anybody talk about Saginaw County.
Saginaw County.
And in politics, if you are not represented in those rooms and in those spaces, you're passed over. Your situation is ignored. And this is a time where Saginaw can get ahead and be first. And I'm from Saginaw and I know about this 52 million. So you bet I'm going to make it my job to make sure that people know about this, that people in the community, I'm ringing the bells, and people can come together and decide for themselves what they want in their community.
Now, you're not working with any particular one organization to try to bring people together. You're working with a group of citizens.
Yes, yes, that's correct. And I've been having an open meeting on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Yes. And you joined me at the last one, yes. And you saw how it was just an open conversation. And it's not something that I really posted about on Facebook. I just sort of word of mouth spread and trying to get it in the right hands. But this is something that we want to cascade into bigger conversations.
Rob, will you do me a favor and play that 2-minute spot again? Because I want people to hear this. Tell us about the person who created that. Go ahead.
So this was Naisha who created this. I think Naisha Clark, and she has done a lot of different media projects in the city. She's done, I think she helped design billboards.
What would you
she
do
does a lot of like photo shoots and different art projects in the city. She's an amazing creative mind, and she helped put this together. And she's a go-getter. You heard on the call we were at 1. She's like, okay, what am I doing? What do I have to do? She put this video together, or it is a video. It's online. We're just listening to the audio, of course, on radio. But she put it together in just a few days. And made it upbeat and made it exactly the message we want to spread, which is giving people the opportunity to dream about what their community could be like.
Let's go through beginning what this document. It's a 151-page document that tells about the ARPA funds and what these funds can be used for.
So ARPA was passed on March 11th, and if you got was a $1,400 stimulus check payment?
Yes.
That was ARPA, and ARPA spent over $1 trillion doing a lot of different things. It gave billions to childcare, housing assistance, rental assistance, education, infrastructure, a lot of things. And then one of these buckets was direct fiscal payments to state, local, and tribal governments. And something very unique happened because we have a state legislature that is very unkind to any kind of funding. Right now, my education justice people want me to share this. There is over $1 billion sitting in the state legislature right now, the Republican-led state legislature, that they're sitting on, waiting to expire. Over $1 billion for Michigan schools that they want to expire. Why? Because giving that money to schools and having our education system transformed would look good for the governor. And they like to win elections more than they like to see our kids actually educated right now. That is the attitude of a lot of people in the legislature. And so elections matter, and this is the legislature we're dealt with. But from the federal government perspective, they're trying to avoid a fiscal disaster. They're trying to avoid a recession like what happened in 2008. And what we know happened in 2008 is that Black and brown communities felt the 2008 recession back in like 2005, and they never recovered. What happened is they had to cut services, cut programs and things in cities and communities, and never got back to that point where they had the revenue to be able to pay for those services again. We privatized a lot of utilities. We privatized. People probably remember trash rates going up, water rates going up, and Flint went into emergency management, partially, actually in large part, due to the 2008 recession, and that they felt it even before 2008. I think 2007, they started having really bad financial problems.
So that wasn't because of revenue sharing going down.
Oh, absolutely. Revenue sharing going down had a lot to contribute. So revenue sharing is the process where the state government collects taxes and gives that, just redistributes them among the cities. Because, of course, you pay taxes to the state and to the local government, and the state government decides how to allocate those. And back in 1994, there was a whole thing. I won't get into it. It's called Prop A. But it redistributed. It was supposed to create more equity for our school districts. That's what it was supposed to do. And what ended up happening is the opposite. Instead of spending those funds more equitably, what the legislature did is cut taxes for wealthy people, cut taxes for corporations, so decreased our overall revenue, and then cut school funding. And the way that they I'm using air quotes here, equitably distributed the funds was by testing. And, oh, if your school does good in tests, then we'll give you more money. Or, oh, we're going to do teacher evaluations and you get more grants, you get more money if you do well, which of course the schools that are predisposed to have more resources before that are going to do better. So with that and with revenue sharing, basically they cut the big pot in half and stopped giving cities what cities were owed. They cut what's called the statutory requirements, which means that it's a state law. They had the law passing they were supposed to share with cities, and then they just changed the law because they're the state legislature in order to, again, cut taxes to wealthy people and corporations.
This money from ARPA was given to the city of Saginaw.
Yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, do you know if they have begun to plan what they're going to do? Because the money is here.
The money is here. I don't know the actual details. I don't know if Joe Biden's going to have to come down here and write a big old check. I doubt that's how it works. But the thing, this has never really happened before, where the legislature usually gets money from the federal government and then they distribute it among cities how they see fit. Basically, the federal government just skipped the state and went right to the cities. So yes, it was, as far as I know, the city got access to half of the funds. So they're in two, what they're called tranches. Half the money, half of the $52 million we have now, that was distributed on May 11th. So the city of Saginaw has that money. And then the other half we're getting May 11th of 2022. So we're still getting $52 million, one year, one the next year. And supposedly it's supposed to be spent by 2026, but the rules are kind of vague there. It's more so about appropriation than about actually liquidating the expenses. But this is basically a large amount of money that they're asking the city of Saginaw to spend in a relatively short amount of time.
When you were running for office in 2018, 2020, I'm sorry. One of the things that you talked about was community. Okay. Rebuilding our communities, having money for everything that we need in our community. How will this pot of money help? And let's begin to talk about some of the things that could be done here. So
usually when there's any sort of money that comes to a community, it comes with a lot of footnotes. You get a $10,000 grant that's only allowed to be spent on a Sunday afternoon when it's 72 degrees outside, and it can only be spent for police dogs or something. Like they're very specific. So this is completely the opposite. It's really historic the way that this plan is laid out and the Treasury guidance around this money. It is $52 million to respond to the public health emergency, but also to the disproportionately and negatively impacted communities. The Treasury guidance recognizes that communities just like Saginaw have had disproportionate disparities that negatively affect everything from public health to education to their economic development, all that sorts of things. It's all affected by, they don't say this in the document, racism, segregation, white supremacy, but they get very close to saying it in the document.
Right.
And what they do say is they want to mitigate the long-term systemic issues in these communities. And in these 151 pages, they lay out everything from addressing homelessness with building affordable housing, community services. You can give this money to a C3 nonprofit to help them distribute funds in the community and help people access other support systems that are there. You can spend it towards parks. You can spend it towards any sort of public health. You can spend it towards a community pool or a center. And again, these things are laid out very broadly because they want communities to engage. And I'll read the sentence for you because this is right from the Treasury guidance itself. Treasury urges state, territorial, tribal, and local governments to engage their constituents and communities in developing plans to use these payments given the scale of funding and its potential to catalyze broader economic recovery and rebuilding. And it says, again, Treasury encourages recipients to consider funding uses that foster a strong, inclusive, and equitable recovery, especially uses with long-term benefits for health and economic outcomes.
And they want this to be done in part by citizens and residents who live in these communities.
This is intended to be an inclusive process with a lot of communication.
So we need you, the listener, if you are a resident of the city of Saginaw and you would like to have your information out there and let the city council know what you would like to see in your community, then you should do what, Carly?
I should sign up for public comment for sure. They have meetings every other Monday. I think, unfortunately, you have to do it 24 hours in advance. So I believe the sign up has already passed for tomorrow's meeting. I do know they're discussing budget at tomorrow's meeting. I don't believe they're discussing ARPA funds. So there is definitely time to get in public comment. And also, First Ward Community Center is going to be holding the first of a series of forums on this issue meant for the community to come and participate and give their ideas about what you want to see in Saginaw. And they're holding their first one this Thursday, May 27th at 6 p.m. If you follow First Ward on Facebook, I'm sure you'll see all about it. Michelle McGregor is going to put out lots of flyers about it. And it's going to be, like I said, just the first. So if you can't make it, this is something that we want to take off organically, not just, once, we're going to do 2 community meetings and that's it. No. This, in my vision, I see dozens and dozens of community meetings happening, whether it's somebody at their home and they're inviting their friends and their neighbors to come and talk about it. And then we have some sort of form submission online where people can communicate it, or just bringing it to whatever, community leader or mouthpiece to be able to share that with the council and with the community at large.
You are not taking the lead in terms of this whole thing, pulling a group together. It is the community itself. Michelle McGregor, who is the executive director, CEO of First Ward Community Center. They have been in the community for, 89 to 90 years. Okay. And so it is a community effort. It's not just one individual's effort, but certainly you have the background and the knowledge about this guidance and this interim rule from the Treasury Department. And we want the citizens of Saginaw, I'm always talking about what needs to be done in a community, what we don't have, how can we get it? And many times when you go through City Hall, you don't always get what you want. It takes a long time. The funds aren't there. We have $52 million to do a lot of great things, needed things that they give you ideas and suggestions in this 151 page document. Go over some of those. Let's just give them an idea so they can come to the table at First Ward.
Yeah. And I'll start again with to get people in the mindset of being allowed to dream about your community.
52 million dream.
$52 million dream. We're both smiling because it's a crazy opportunity. I would not have believed this possible just a couple years ago. But this is, again, from the Treasury guidance to the federal government Department of Treasury. Low-income communities and workers and people of color have faced more severe health and economic outcomes during this pandemic, with pre-existing social vulnerabilities like low wage or insecure employment, concentrated neighborhoods with less economic opportunity, and pre-existing health disparities likely contributing to the magnified impact of the pandemic. The fiscal recovery funds provide resources to not only respond to the immediate harms of the pandemic, but also to mitigate its longer-term impacts in compounding the systemic public health and economic challenges of disproportionately impacted populations. Boom. Isn't it nice to hear your government acknowledge about pre-existing disparities and disproportionately impacted populations?
How easy or how hard is it going to be for residents to work with city officials in order to make their wants and their needs known and heard and have some follow-up. Is there anything in this document that says that they must do what the community is asking?
No, there's not. There is not a way to necessarily regulate that. There is accountability measures from the federal government to the city to make sure that they're not spending it. There's a couple not allowable uses that you can't use this to cut services like this. You can't cut the entire Parks Department and then just fill it in with this money and then go use that money someplace else. That's not what this money's for. And also you can't use it for tax cuts.
But we can we create a Parks and Rec department? Because we don't have that now.
Oh, you absolutely can. You
We don't have that.
absolutely
I mean,
can.
that was gone a long time ago.
If and the way that they write this is to encourage people to say that this is the practices to address the social, emotional, and mental health needs of students, of young people, of your community. That's a whole lot. That's broad,
Yes,
and it's
yes.
meant to be broad. But in terms of communicating with council and the challenges there, I don't expect everybody to make time in their schedule to speak at a council meeting. I think that in this case, where it's $52 million that is for the community, I would hope that the council would come together and make a point to come out to some of these meetings to hear what these peoples are saying and the ideas, and to have this open discussion in wherever they can, in whatever space that they can, to make sure that this process is as transparent as possible, and to make sure that people aren't just being listened to, aren't just being heard, but what people are saying grows into actionable items, into actual budget line items on the agenda that are then acted on, that are spent on. And because again, it's not that long of a timetable. It's not that long of a timetable to get this done. So I think that this summer, this is the summer where Saginaw gets to figure out what it wants to do with $52 million. And I will say, if we can do this, if we can get this done, if we can get the community together, and if we can make this happen, it won't just be $52 million, because the Biden administration is also working on the American Jobs Plan, which eclipses the American Rescue Plan in terms of dollars spent. And it's all about infrastructure. It has money specifically set out for neighborhoods that were cut off by interstate highways. That's Saginaw. Hello.
That is Saginaw.
That's Saginaw.
Right. That's right.
And it's got everything for lead service, line replacement, hundreds of billions of dollars for roads and bridges, and just the amount of money going that could be coming to Saginaw. This is our chance to make it impactful. This is our chance to do it right. And this is our chance to show the rest of the state also how it can be done.
So areas like the Green Belt from Washington and Potter Street, all the way down to where the Gray Iron Foundry is, towards First Ward Community Center, that area, from the freeway, from the 5th, 6th Street freeways on I-675, all the way over to Potter Street and all the way over to the Eddie Renewal area. These are areas where services are needed. I mean, it's been devastated for many years. You know, we don't have services, we don't have parks, we don't have, stores. There's barely a gasoline station there. There are a few convenience stores. Same thing over for the Houghton Jones area. All of the community, what we consider as community and neighborhoods, could use dollars in those areas to make the areas comfortable for residents, to help them to really make it a community.
Improve quality of life. And I just don't mean that, because when you say quality of life, it almost sounds like you're talking about like in hospice care, where like you're improving their quality of life. And honestly, that's what I get the sense of sometimes people talking about in the community, like, well, we know Saginaw just can't be this thing, so let's just try to make it all right while it
quality
lasts.
of life includes everything that we need in order to survive.
Exactly.
In a neighborhood without having to go miles and miles outside of the neighborhood. It should be within walking distance, and the pavement should be clear in order to.
The pavement should be clear, and people should have the opportunity to feel safe in their neighborhoods and to feel Like, we have a sense of connection. Like, Saginaw isn't split between east side and west side, split by the river, or split by a crime rate, or split by a color. Because right now there's a lot of divisions in Saginaw.
Yes.
And
it's been like that for a long time,
oh, yes.
Carly. And efforts in the past to change that have not always been successful. They just kind of put a Band-Aid over it. And then, you're supposed to continue on like this. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. What we're trying to do is encourage the community to become involved in these meetings, these workshops, these town hall meetings that we're going to have around the community for the next, well, I don't know how long, but we're going to have one over at First Ward Community Center, and there will be several that will take place there under the guidance of Michelle McGregor, who is Executive Director and CEO at First Ward Community Center. We invite you to come out and be a part of that and learn about, if you don't have any ideas, we'll have ideas there to get you going. But I know that many people who have lived in this community, born and raised, second generation people, young people who are coming up, older people, we want every one of you to become involved. Well, I shouldn't say that. Everybody isn't over with the COVID thing, but we want a great number of people to come in and make sure that they understand about this $52 million, that it is available right now. You can be a part of the process and deciding what is going to go into your neighborhood, and make sure that your neighborhood gets some money.
Exactly.
It reminds me of doing a master plan for the community. I know the city of Saginaw has a master plan, but you don't often get a chance to see that. Does it really speak to what we need in the community? Not always, because I know that the city governments and all municipalities will have their own priorities for what they want to do. But there's some things in here about infrastructure they can't use that money for. They can't use it for, I think there are 4 or 5 different areas that they can't use that money for.
Yes, it's interesting because the letter of the law when it was passed said you could use it for water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And in the Treasury guidance, they sort of went over that and said this is a COVID recovery bill and addressing systemic issues. So it's very hard to prove that infrastructure had it bad during COVID. A lot of people stayed home and the road conditions didn't necessarily get worse. But this is not an infrastructure bill. This is not an infrastructure spending bill. We will have infrastructure spending bills, and you can spend it on broadband if that's something that the community really resoundingly wants to do now. But what I will say is there is also money coming down the line. The pipeline, the American Jobs Act. We also have the American Families Plan. And if you're thinking, education. We've got $1 billion sitting in our legislature for education. We've got likely another whole $1 billion coming in with the American Families Plan. And these are things that we need to start thinking about in terms of abundance instead of scarcity.
We need to take a short break right here. Rob, will you please, before you do that break, play that again? I want people to know we have $52 million right here. And we want your input on how to spend it for the betterment of this community. That's what we need. You're listening to Community Connections, Community Talk for Community People. My guest, Carly Rose Hammond. We'll be right back.
Hey, Saginaw, what would you do if you had $52 million to improve Saginaw?
Rent would be paid. Rent would be paid, at least for a month, for everybody. Rent would be out of the way. I would help out with health bills. And I would invest in our schools and the proper technology for students to actually learn in this environment.
For my part, I think Saginaw should pour as much money into affordable housing as it can to help people recover from this horrible pandemic.
And with that $54 million that the city of Saginaw just received, I feel like I could use that funding to start after-school programs for the children and the youth of our city who don't have anything to do during a pandemic, also after school. I also feel like with that $54 million, we could start an initiative to actually beautify our city street by street and actually employ maybe homeless people who regularly wouldn't have a job?
Personally, I would like to see improvement in our schools, especially our city schools. I feel like we leave these kids behind, so I'd like to see a better plan for that.
I think the money the city got should be implemented in improving the east side of Saginaw. Parks, schools. You guys need to put it into the east side.
A lot of the residential areas, away from downtown, are kind of run down and don't get the financial attention that they deserve and need.
Think it over. Think it through. Think Saginaw. What would you do if you had $52 million to improve your community?
You're listening to Community Connections with Joyce Harvin on KISS 107.1.
It's straight talk, straight with no chaser. It's Straight Talk with Kareem Bowen, getting right to the heart of the matter, giving you all of what's happening in Saginaw and the Great Lakes Bay region, all at a grassroots level. Sundays at 6 p.m. on KISS 107.1.
Mayday, mayday. Trade in and trade up for thousands less at Showcase Mitsubishi Bay City. Calling all cars. Attention all trucks and SUVs. Trade in immediately at Showcase Mitsubishi Bay City.
Showcase Mitsubishi Bay City needs your trade, and we need it now. There has never been a better time to get more for your old beater, even if you owe up to $10,000 more than your old car, truck, or SUV is worth. We want it so you can drive home a new Mitsubishi with a 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty for less. Showcase Mitsubishi Bay City has a great selection of new Mitsubishis with more arriving daily. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. Showcase Mitsubishi Bay City says come and get it, even if your credit is less than perfect. We're the home of credit forgiveness. Get pre-approved right now at showcasemitsubishi.com, up to $30,000, no social required. Only at Showcase Mitsubishi Bay City, the home of credit forgiveness and America's lowest priced SUVs. Or online at showcasemitsubishi.com.
Trade balance refinance to new loan, subject to lender approval.
Finished a load of laundry, drop the kids off at daycare, hit the gym for a quick workout, stop by Mickey D's to grab some breakfast, got to work before my boss did, and it's only 9 a.m. Meal.
There's a meal for every morning at McDonald's.
Get a sausage McMuffin with egg McMuffin, or bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. Any two for just $5. Breakfast hours only. Single item at regular price. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal.
I'm Dr. Baker, an ER physician. If you're having leg pain, swelling, or redness, but haven't talked to your doctor yet, don't wait. This could be deep vein thrombosis, a blood clot which could travel to your lungs and lead to a pulmonary embolism, which could cause chest pain or discomfort or difficulty breathing and be deadly. Your symptoms could mean something serious, so don't wait. Talk to a doctor right away, by phone, online, or in person.
Brought to you by Bristol Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
And now, back to Community Connections on KISS 107.1.
You're back with Community Connections, Community Talk for Community People. I'm Joyce Harvin. I'm so glad that you are listening to the show today because we have $52 million. $52 million that we can spend in the city of Saginaw for our community.
In the city of Saginaw. And I didn't mention this beforehand, but every single community in Michigan is getting some amount of money from this program. Yeah. The county of Saginaw. Mm-hmm. So just on top of the city, I'm pretty sure the county is getting over $30 million, somewhere between 32 and 37, something like that. So all of the people, if you're on the township right now, you can look up. You can go online and look up. I think it's Bridge Magazine has a little tool. Just search ARPA Bridge Magazine. They have a little tool where you can search how much money your community is getting. Mm-hmm. Some of the townships might only be getting like 50,000 or 100,000 because you've got a low population. But for each municipality, for the amount of people are in it, it's likely a transformative amount of money. So for the city of Saginaw, it's $52 million. It's an insane amount of money to do a crazy amount of change with. So this is what this conversation is focused on. But there are other conversations to be had in all the communities in Michigan right now.
Can the city of Saginaw blend their master plan with a new plan to spend this money to make sure that the residents of Saginaw will get what they want?
I think that's an incredible idea, because I think that this isn't just, and I teased this right before the break, where it's not necessarily just 52 million.
Mm-hmm.
Under the Biden presidency, we're seeing, again, this is the American Rescue Plan Act. We've got the American Families Plan, which is going to be the American Families Plan Act when it's passed, and then the American Jobs Plan. And this is just like the first 2 years sort of a thing.
We need to get ready.
We need to get ready. And the point of doing this now and getting ahead of it is that this money, this 52 million, can turn into 500 million if we as a community organize around it. So I really hope that our city leaders are able to take this and adapt to it and roll with it to turn it into something that is, it's not just spending this money for the next 6 years and we don't, we're so worried about a cliff that we don't create any transformative programs, but that we create in Saginaw the solutions, the long-term solutions that engender change, like this money is supposed to be used for, to predict that in the future, this is the new bar. This is the new bar, and we're not going to demand any less from our representatives.
We need to be at the table like right now, making sure.
We need to bring our own table. And that's what this is. We're bringing our own table.
I'm looking forward to the town hall meetings that we're going to have to kick this off over at First Ward Community Center. Give us those dates again.
So we've got our first community meeting at First Ward Community Center this Thursday, May 27th at 6 p.m. And if you come a little bit late, that's okay. This is meant to be an interactive thing. This isn't going to be me giving you a boring PowerPoint about everything in ARPA and then asking you at the end to fill out a little survey. This is going to be an interactive experience where people can engage with each other and people can engage and learn, about the facts. And there are just a few things you can't spend this money on, but I highly doubt, you can't spend it on pensions,
right,
for the city. So, okay. But that still leaves a lot to be, a lot of stuff to dream about. And in the ARPA plan, they talk about housing services, remediation of lead paint, everything from that to Head Start programs, expanded Head Start programs in the community, promoting healthy childhood environments, affordable housing development, housing vouchers, funding community health workers, funding public benefits navigators to assist community members with navigating and applying for available benefits or services, which is huge. If you live if anybody, that there's a lot of programs out there, they're really confusing.
Yes.
And there's money in this ARPA to help organizations like First Ward get staffing to be able to help the community navigate these and get more dollars in the pockets and more assistance in the pockets of people in Saginaw.
So are we looking for long range planning so that this 52 million will go a long ways along with the Jobs Act and the Families Act, so that money, so we will know and not lose any money, but use everything that is being given to us?
There's going to be a lot of coordination, and there's a lot of political navigation, which in politics things always get sticky. The American Jobs Act, or the American Jobs Plan, I should say, is not passed yet. And in Congress, if you've heard anything, there's this thing called the filibuster that certain people are trying to get rid of. The ARPA was passed using a reconciliation process, which is like a Senate. It's like a Senate rules thing where the Senate parliamentarian, who none of us even knew existed before this year, she comes out and she says, "Oh, well, I think we can do this. I don't think that you can do that." So part of the reason why ARPA doesn't have so many tags on it for payments is because there couldn't be an appropriations process in one of the committees or something. It's very convoluted, and it's apparently different every time. And I've heard from one congressional representative, I've heard one congresswoman tell me that you could only use this every year. Another person told me we'll use it once every 2 years. Another person told me you could use it twice a year. So nobody knows. The answer is no. The rules are made up, and the points don't matter. Nobody knows what's going on right now. But we know that the American Jobs Plan is going to come in one form or another, and it's going to be a big spending plan, and it's going to be about infrastructure, and it's going to be about bringing jobs. So we can look down the road and say, hey, we know this big infrastructure plan is going, so how do we roll ARPA into that, where we're working on transforming our communities? We know this money's coming down the road, and in some form, we don't know the numbers yet, which is, I know it makes it hard to plan. but how can we work on long-term solutions and transformational change? This is, again, and this is something that my organization at the revenue table that we're talking about in ARPA, this isn't a one-shot cure. This ARPA it's a lot of money, but it doesn't even make up for the lost revenue sharing like we talked about earlier. Okay. Saginaw would have gotten, I think we miss out on like $111 million or something like that rather than $52 million. So we're getting what we're owed. Okay. And even then, not even the full amount of what we're owed. Now, one's coming from the federal government rather than what we're owed from the state. But the way to think about it is this is a down payment for our future. Mm-hmm. This is a down payment for our future. And the attitude coming into this, I encourage citizens to think big.
Think big, right?
And
this is not soft money. This is hard money. It's
hard money. It's real. And I think you kept on asking me in our Wednesday meeting, who has this money? Like what entity has it? It's the city of Saginaw. Okay, but who gets to spend it? The Saginaw City Council. It's gonna be on their desks.
No one's talking about it.
And no one's talking about it. And I don't put that at the blame of anybody's feet because this has never been done before. The reconciliation process made this really messy. Nobody knows how it's going to work out, but I will tell you that people are watching and listening to see how it turns out. Because if the Biden administration thinks that this spending works, they'll do it again. Mm-hmm. They'll do the same model with the American Families Plan, perhaps, with the American Jobs Plan, perhaps, or another plan down the road. If giving money directly to local communities on this funding model works, they'll do it again. If it's popular, they'll do it again. If communities come back and say, we really saw change, we saw improvement, I feel empowered, they're going to do it again. So it's sort of like a tail wagging the dog, where if Saginaw takes the lead on this, we could become the model, a model for the nation. And that's why I'm here, because I know that this information can get sketchy. People are in disbelief. But what I will tell you is that the time to dream is now, and the time to speak is now.
Is now. Yes, yes. The city may hire urban planners.
They may.
Okay, they may hire them, but they will still have to work with the people in the communities in order to set out that plan or to go over the plan. Mm-hmm. They may want to reinvent the wheel again after we've had all of our meetings, but we want to get that done. So we want everyone at the table. If you have an idea of what you want your community to look like, we ask you to attend this meeting, this first meeting at First Ward Community Center. Give us the dates again, Carly.
It is
because we want people to be there. You can go to their Facebook page or their website and get the address. I don't know the address right off, but it's on Washington and 12th Street.
Yeah, and they might have it outside if it's nice weather, which will be more COVID friendly. If I'm sure we'll have a digital thing as well to make sure people can engage safely. But it's going to be this Thursday at 6 p.m. So it's May 27th. Okay. And it's going to be at the First Ward Community Center. And again, the first meeting, not the last, certainly not the last.
So are we sending invitations to the city council to come and join us?
Oh, absolutely. And what I would also encourage is that, if you think of yourself as a community leader or you're a pastor listening to this station, is to come to that first meeting, or even if you can't attend, get somebody's contact information. If you know Joyce, if you know Michelle, and ask us, what's the best way I can hold this conversation in my community, that we can have it after a Bible study session or something like that, because this is a conversation that can be had with any amount of people in any space in Saginaw. And however we want to collect these stories, we'll come up with something. We'll come up with something for collection. We'll have multiple things, I'm sure. But however, to give that message, to talk about the money, to talk about how we want to use this money, and then to give that so it hands off to the city council and city authorities. However that process happens, all those voices need to be heard. And your voice, if you're listening to this program right now, needs to be heard.
Okay. Parents, residents, I hope that you will engage your kids. Ask them what they would like to see in their community. What would they like to have, whether it's a playground or a skateboard park, things that kids like. We need that quality of life. We need recreation, yes. We need after school programs, yes. But we need to teach our kids how to play again and feel safe in the community. So all of those type of things can be done with this money.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a saddening amount of violence right now in our youth in Saginaw. And it is also these times when it's hard to think about the future when we're in such a crisis, but it's also so important to think about the solutions. Those solutions we know in our heads and in our hearts that will help the community, that will help people want to live in Saginaw.
Please be a part of the solution. We need you at the table to voice your concerns and about this particular pot of money. How much is it?
$52 million.
Million dollars that we can spend.
Did Saginaw just win the lottery?
You're right. It sounds like it. That's a good amount of money. But we hope that you will continue to listen to the show. And I'm going to have Carly back. We're going to break some things down in here as we go through this. But we hope that you will attend the town hall. Are we calling it a town hall meeting?
Town hall forum. I don't want it to make it sound like we're shouting at people.
We want you there. We want you there.
We want you there this Thursday.
And we want your input as to how that money could be spent to better our communities. Carly, I want to say thank you.
Thank you so much for
being
having
here.
Me.
Carly, what's next for you? Are you going to run for office again?
Oh, goodness. I am very happy in my position at the revenue table right now. That is what I will say. I am very happy to be doing this with Saginaw to act as a bridge between the Saginaw of now and the Saginaw of the future.
Okay. Thank you. My guest, Carly Rose Hammond, and she is with
I am with the Progressive Revenue Roundtable, which is a mouthful.
Yes. Just representing Saginaw, letting us be aware, making us aware of what has come into our community and how we may benefit from it. Thank you for tuning in this afternoon. I'll talk to you next Sunday right here on Community Connections, Community Talk for community people. Join me at 5 p.m. Talk to you next week.
You've been listening to Community Connections with Joyce Harvin on KISS 107.1. The views and opinions expressed on Community Connections by the host, its guests, or call-ins do not necessarily represent the opinion